For many years, Laura believed that health was something complicated, something that required strict diets, long hours at the gym, or expensive programs that promised to change everything in 30 days. But at 47 years old, she felt something very different. She felt tired, not sick, not weak, just quietly tired, the kind of tiredness that slowly fills the body after many years of living the same routine. Laura lived in a quiet neighborhood outside a small American city. Her house stood on a calm street lined with tall maple trees that changed colors every autumn. In the mornings, the neighborhood was full of movement. Cars leaving for work, children walking to school, dogs barking happily during their morning walks. But Laura rarely noticed those moments. Her mornings were always rushed. Wake up, prepare breakfast, answer messages from work, drive through traffic, sit at a desk for hours. By the time evening arrived, her body already felt heavy. Her shoulders felt tight. Her head often felt full of thoughts she couldn't easily silence. When she returned home after work, she usually prepared a simple dinner, sometimes pasta, sometimes soup, sometimes just something quick from the refrigerator. She would sit at the small wooden table near the kitchen window and eat quietly, often with the television on. The voices from the television filled the house, news reports, conversations from talk shows, advertisements talking about products she didn't need. The noise made the house feel less empty, but it also made her mind feel more crowded. After dinner, Laura usually moved to the couch, her phone in one hand, the television still glowing softly across the room. Time would pass without her noticing. An hour, sometimes two. By the time she finally stood up to go to bed, her body felt even heavier than before. Her sleep was not terrible, but it was not peaceful either. She often woke up during the night, sometimes thinking about work, sometimes thinking about small worries that seemed bigger in the dark. In the morning, the tired feeling returned again. And so the same cycle continued, day after day, week after week. Laura didn't complain much about it. Many of her friends felt the same way. They often joked about getting older, about back pain, about bad sleep, about feeling exhausted after work. Everyone said the same thing. This is just what life feels like now. And for a long time, Laura believed that was true, until one evening that felt slightly different. It was late spring. The sun was still hanging low in the sky even though dinner was finished. The light outside the window looked warm and calm. Laura had just finished washing the dishes. The television was on again, speaking softly in the background. But for some reason, she didn't feel like sitting on the couch. Instead, she stood by the kitchen window and looked outside. The sky was painted with soft orange colors. A gentle breeze moved the leaves of the trees along the street. And for the first time in a long while, Laura noticed how quiet the evening felt. Something inside her wanted fresh air, not exercise, not a workout, just air. She slipped on a light sweater and stepped outside. The front door closed softly behind her. The street looked peaceful. A few houses had lights glowing inside. Some neighbors were finishing their own dinners. In the distance, someone was walking a dog slowly along the sidewalk. Laura stood still for a moment, feeling the cool evening air against her skin. Then she began walking, slowly, not with a plan, not with a destination, just walking. Her shoes touched the pavement with a soft rhythm. Step, step, step. At first, her mind continued racing with thoughts. Emails she needed to answer tomorrow, a meeting that worried her, a small disagreement she had with a coworker earlier that day. But after several minutes, something surprising happened. The thoughts began to slow down. The quiet street gave her mind space to breathe. She walked past houses she had driven by thousands of times but rarely noticed. A garden full of small yellow flowers, a porch light glowing warmly on a wooden deck, the sound of wind moving through tall trees. These were small things, simple things, but they made the evening feel peaceful. Laura realized something interesting as she continued walking. Her body felt lighter, not dramatically, but slightly. Her shoulders relaxed. Her breathing felt deeper. The tight feeling that had been sitting in her chest all day slowly softened. She walked for about 15 minutes before turning around and heading back home. The walk had not been long. It had not been fast. But when she stepped back inside the house, something felt different. The living room looked the same. The television was still talking. The couch was still waiting. But Laura felt calmer. Her mind felt quieter. That night when she went to bed, she fell asleep faster than usual. She didn't think much about the walk. It had simply been a small moment, a simple choice. But sometimes the smallest moments begin the biggest changes. The next evening, after dinner, Laura looked out the window again. The sky was fading slowly into soft purple colors. And without thinking too much, she put on her shoes and stepped outside once more. For many years, my evenings followed the same quiet routine: dinner, dishes, a little television, and then bed. Nothing felt wrong with this routine. In fact, it felt normal, comfortable, predictable. But there was something I began to notice as the years passed. Even though my days were not very busy anymore, my body still felt heavy at night. My mind also felt full, not full of big problems. Just small thoughts that never seemed to stop, little worries, old memories, things I wished I had done differently, things I still needed to do tomorrow. When I lay in bed, my body was tired, but my mind was still awake. Sometimes I turned from one side to the other for a long time before sleep finally came. And when morning arrived, I did not always feel rested. I remember one evening very clearly. It was a quiet Tuesday night. After dinner, I stood in the kitchen drying the last plate. The house was calm, too calm. My husband was already reading in the living room. The television was off. Outside the window, the sky was slowly becoming darker. I suddenly felt the need to step outside, not for a reason, just for a little air. I placed the towel on the kitchen counter and told my husband softly, "I'm going to walk for a few minutes." He looked up from his book and smiled. "Take your time." So I stepped outside. The air felt cooler than inside the house. The street was quiet, the day was ending slowly, and the evening was beginning to settle. At first, I only planned to walk to the end of the street. Our neighborhood was very familiar. I had lived there for more than 15 years. But strangely, I realized something while walking. I had driven through these streets thousands of times, yet I had rarely walked through them slowly. When you walk slowly, you notice different things. The sound of leaves moving in the wind, the smell of someone cooking dinner, a dog barking in the distance, the soft glow of lights appearing in windows. I walked to the end of the street and stopped for a moment. The sky had turned a deep blue. A few early stars were beginning to appear. For the first time that day, my breathing felt slow. My shoulders felt lighter. My thoughts became quieter. I didn't check my phone. I didn't hurry. I simply turned around and walked back home. The walk probably lasted only 10 minutes, but something about it felt surprisingly peaceful. That night when I went to bed, I noticed something unusual. My mind was quieter, my body felt gently tired, and sleep came faster than usual. The next evening, after dinner, I remembered that peaceful feeling. So without thinking too much, I said again, I'm going for a short walk. This time, my husband nodded immediately. That sounds nice. The second walk felt familiar. The same street, the same quiet houses, the same gentle evening air, but my body relaxed faster. And again, that night, I slept well. At that time, I still didn't think of it as a habit. It was just something small, something simple, something I did when the evening felt too quiet inside the house. But after a few days, something interesting happened. I began to look forward to the walk, not in a big, exciting way, more like a quiet promise waiting at the end of the day. Dinner would end, and the dishes would be finished. And then I would step outside for a few minutes. Some evenings the sky was orange and pink. Some evenings the clouds were gray. Some evenings the air smelled like rain. But every evening something inside me felt calmer. I began to notice small changes in my body too. My legs felt a little stronger. My breathing felt deeper. Even my appetite at dinner felt more balanced. But the biggest change was something I didn't expect. My mind began to feel lighter. During those slow evening walks, my thoughts moved differently. Instead of racing around, they passed slowly, like clouds. Sometimes I thought about my children. Sometimes I remembered old friends. Sometimes I simply watched the trees move in the wind. There was no pressure, no schedule, no noise. Just walking, just breathing, just being present in that quiet moment. One evening, while walking, I passed my neighbor Linda. She was watering flowers near her front door. She looked surprised to see me. "You're walking again?" she asked with a smile. I laughed softly. "Yes, it seems to be becoming a habit." She nodded. "I started doing that last year. It helps more than people think." That sentence stayed with me. It helps more than people think. At the time, I didn't fully understand what she meant, but slowly, week after week, I began to understand. Those small walks were doing something gentle inside my body, something calm, something healing. But the real surprise came a few weeks later. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight was already touching the curtains, and for the first time in many months, I noticed something very simple. I felt rested, truly rested. My body felt lighter, my head felt clear. There was no heaviness in my chest, no fog in my mind, just a quiet sense of energy. I sat at the edge of the bed for a moment, thinking. Nothing dramatic had changed in my life. My routine was mostly the same, but that small evening walk had quietly become part of my day, and somehow it was beginning to change how my body felt. Of course, I still didn't realize how important that little habit would become, because in the following weeks, the changes would continue, not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, very slowly, just like the gentle steps of those evening walks. For the first few weeks, my evening walks remained very simple. I did not set a goal. I didn't count steps. I did not wear a fitness watch. In fact, I rarely even looked at the time. I simply finished dinner, stepped outside, and began walking slowly through the quiet neighborhood. Some evenings I walked 10 minutes, other evenings maybe 20, but I never forced myself to go farther than my body wanted. That was the difference between these walks and exercise routines I had tried before. In the past, and whenever I decided to get healthy, I always started with big plans. I bought workout clothes. I watched videos about intense workouts. I promised myself I would exercise every morning, and for a few days, I usually did. But after a week or two, the routine always felt heavy. It felt like pressure, something I had to do, something that reminded me of discipline instead of peace. Eventually, I stopped, but these evening walks felt completely different. There was no pressure and no expectations, just quiet movement. And because of that, something interesting happened. I kept doing it. One evening became three. 3 evenings became a full week. And before I realized it, the habit had quietly followed me for almost a month. During that time, I began noticing small changes in my body. Very small changes. The kind you almost miss if you are not paying attention. For example, my digestion began to feel better after dinner. In the past, I sometimes felt heavy after eating, especially when I sat on the couch immediately after a meal. But walking slowly after dinner seemed to help my body settle. The uncomfortable feeling disappeared. My stomach felt lighter. Another change was in my breathing. I'd never thought much about breathing before. It simply happened. But during my walks, I started noticing how deeply I could breathe when I moved slowly. The cool evening air filled my lungs, and with each step, my breathing became calm and steady. Sometimes I would stop for a moment under a tree and simply take a slow breath. It felt refreshing, like giving my body a small reset after the day. But the biggest change was happening in my mind. During the first week of walking, my thoughts were still busy. My brain continued thinking about work, responsibilities, and the small worries of daily life. But something began shifting during the second and third week. The thoughts started becoming quieter, not disappearing completely, just slowing down. Instead of 10 thoughts racing through my mind at once, there were maybe 2 or 3. Sometimes I noticed something beautiful happening during the walk. There were moments when my mind felt completely calm. No worries, no planning, just the sound of my footsteps on the sidewalk and the gentle movement of the evening around me. One night stands out clearly in my memory. It was late summer. The air was warm but comfortable. As I walked down the street, I heard the soft sound of crickets beginning their nightly song. The sky was slowly turning darker, and the houses around the neighborhood glowed with warm yellow lights from their windows. People were finishing dinner, some families were laughing inside their homes, others were sitting quietly on their porches. Everything felt peaceful. I realized something surprising during that walk. For years, I had believed my evenings were the most stressful part of my day. But maybe the evenings were never the problem. Maybe it was how I spent them. Inside the house, surrounded by screens and noise, my mind never had space to rest. But outside, walking slowly in the open air, everything felt different. The world moved more slowly, and my body seemed to follow that slower rhythm. A few days later, I noticed another unexpected change. My sleep was improving. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but night after night, the same thing happened. After my evening walk, my body felt naturally tired, not exhausted, just gently ready for rest. When I lay down in bed, sleep arrived faster. I also woke up less during the night. In the morning, I felt clearer, more refreshed. Even my mood during the day began to improve. Little frustrations at work bothered me less. I felt more patient, more balanced. One afternoon, I mentioned the evening walks to my doctor during a routine visit. She smiled when she heard about it. "That's actually one of the best habits you can build," she said. I looked at her slightly surprised. "Really? Even if it's just a short walk?" She nodded. "Especially if it's after dinner. Gentle walking helps digestion, reduces stress, improves sleep, and supports heart health." Then she added something that stayed with me. "The best exercise is the one you can continue doing." That sentence made me think about my past attempts at fitness, all the strict routines, all the plans that started strong and slowly disappeared. But this walk was different. It was simple, It was peaceful. And most importantly, it felt sustainable. That evening, when I stepped outside again, I noticed my steps felt stronger, not faster, just more confident. The path through the neighborhood felt familiar now. The same trees, the same sidewalks, the same quiet houses. But something inside me had begun changing. These walks were no longer just a way to get fresh air. They had become something deeper, a small daily ritual, a quiet moment that belonged only to me, a moment when my body could move gently and my mind could breathe. And without realizing it, that small evening habit was slowly reshaping my health in ways I had never expected. By the time autumn arrived, my evening walks had quietly become part of my life. I no longer had to remind myself to go. My body expected it. After dinner, when the dishes were done and the kitchen lights were turned off, I naturally reached for my shoes. The walk had become a gentle bridge between the busy day and the quiet night, something that helped my body slow down, something that helped my mind let go of the noise of the day. The neighborhood looked different in autumn. The trees that had been green all summer slowly turned shades of orange, red, and yellow. Some evenings, the sidewalks were covered with fallen leaves. When I walked through them, they made soft, crunching sounds under my feet. The air also changed. It became cooler, crisper. Each breath felt refreshing. Sometimes I wrapped a light scarf around my neck before stepping outside. And as I walked, I could see small clouds of warm breath in the cool air. These small details made each walk feel special. Even though the path was the same, every evening felt slightly different. And during those months, the changes in my body continued. The tired feeling I used to carry every evening slowly faded. In the past, by 8 or 9 o'clock at night, I often felt heavy and uncomfortable. My shoulders were tight, my back felt stiff, but now my body felt more relaxed. Walking seemed to loosen the tension that built up during the day. My posture improved too. I began standing a little straighter without even noticing. My breathing felt deeper. My steps felt lighter. Even my energy during the day started improving. In the mornings, I woke up feeling clearer. I didn't rush out of bed anymore. Instead, I sat quietly for a moment, noticing how rested I felt. One morning, I realized something surprising. I had not felt that familiar heavy tiredness in several weeks. The kind of tiredness I once believed was simply part of getting older. It had slowly disappeared. Another interesting change appeared in my mood. Before starting these walks, I sometimes felt overwhelmed by small problems. A difficult conversation, a stressful day at work, a long list of things that needed to be done. But walking each evening created a space where those problems could settle. Instead of carrying stress all night, I released it step by step along the sidewalk. The walk became a quiet form of reflection. Some evenings I thought about my day. Other evenings I didn't think about anything at all. And those silent moments were often the most peaceful. One night, while walking past my neighbor's house, I saw an elderly couple sitting on their porch. They were holding warm cups of tea, watching the evening sky. As I walked past, the woman smiled and waved. "You walk every night," she said kindly. I smiled back. "And almost every night." She nodded thoughtfully. "That's a beautiful habit." Her words stayed with me during the rest of the walk. A beautiful habit. I had never thought of it that way before. To me, it was just something simple. But maybe that was the secret. Many people believe improving health requires big changes: strict diets, long workouts, difficult routines. But my experience was teaching me something very different. Sometimes the most powerful changes begin quietly. A few steps, a few minutes, a small decision repeated every day. One evening, rain began falling lightly just as I finished dinner. I stood by the window looking outside. The streetlights reflected softly on the wet pavement. In the past, rain would have been an easy reason to skip the walk. But that evening, something inside me resisted the idea of staying inside. So I grabbed a light jacket and stepped out anyway. The rain was gentle, not heavy, just small drops falling quietly from the sky. The neighborhood was even quieter than usual. Most people were inside their homes. The sidewalks were empty. As I walked under the soft rain, I felt strangely peaceful. The cool drops touched my jacket. The air smelled fresh, and the world felt calm and slow. When I returned home that night, I realized something important. These walks were no longer just helping my health, they had become something deeper, a moment of connection. Connection with the quiet world outside, connection with my own thoughts, connection with the rhythm of the day ending. It was no longer about exercise, it was about balance. Balance between movement and rest, between noise and silence, between the busy outside world and the calm space inside my mind. Months earlier, I had stepped outside simply to get a little fresh air. But now I understood that those evening walks were giving me much more than that. They were gently restoring something my body had been missing for years. And the most surprising part was how simple it all was. No complicated plan, no expensive equipment, just a quiet walk after dinner. And yet, the impact on my health, my sleep, and my peace of mind had been far greater than I ever expected. But the biggest realization came later, because one day, someone asked me a simple question that made me look at those evening walks in a completely new way. Winter arrived quietly that year. The evenings became darker earlier. By the time dinner ended, the sky outside was already deep blue, sometimes almost black. The air was colder too. Some nights the wind moved strongly through the trees, and the sidewalks felt much emptier than before. At first, I wondered if my evening walks would stop during the winter. Cold weather can easily become an excuse. It is comfortable to stay inside a warm house, to sit on the couch, to wrap yourself in a blanket and watch television. For a few evenings, I almost did exactly that. But something inside me noticed the difference immediately. When I skipped the walk, my body felt heavier again. My mind felt slightly restless. Sleep was not as easy. That was when I realized something important. The walk had quietly become more than just a routine. My body had started depending on that moment of movement and calm. So I made a small decision. And even if the walk was shorter, even if the weather was colder, I would still step outside. The first winter walk felt different. The air was sharp and cool against my face. I wore a thicker coat and warm gloves. The streetlights cast soft golden circles on the sidewalks. The neighborhood looked peaceful in a new way. Most houses were glowing with warm light from inside. Some windows showed families sitting together in their living rooms. Others were quiet and dark. The cold air made my breathing deeper. Each breath felt clean and refreshing. And as I walked slowly through the winter evening, I noticed something beautiful. The silence was even deeper than before. No insects, very few cars, just the soft sound of my footsteps and the distant movement of wind. That winter, my walks became a little shorter, sometimes only 10 minutes, sometimes 15, but they still gave my body the same gentle reset. Step by step, I released the stress of the day. Step by step, my mind became calm again. A few months later, during a regular visit with my doctor, we spoke about my health. She looked at my recent test results and smiled. "Everything looks good," she said. My blood pressure was stable. My sleep had improved. My energy levels were better. Of course, many small things may have contributed to those changes, but when she asked if I had changed anything in my lifestyle, I told her about the evening walks. She nodded immediately. That's one of the best habits you can have, she said. Then she explained something simple. After dinner, the body is still processing food. Gentle movement helps digestion. Walking also reduces stress hormones in the body. It helps the brain transition from activity to rest. Over time, these small benefits add up. They support the heart. They support sleep. They support emotional balance. Listening to her explanation, I realized something that made me smile. The habit that had improved my health the most was also the easiest one I'd ever started. No complicated rules, no pressure, no strict schedule, just walking, just breathing, just giving myself a quiet moment at the end of the day. Months earlier, I believed health required big changes. But this experience taught me something very different. Health often grows from small daily choices, choices that feel gentle, choices that feel peaceful, choices that are easy enough to repeat tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Today, my evening walks are still part of my life. Some days the walk is longer, some days it is short, some evenings the sky is bright and colorful. Other evenings are dark and quiet, but every walk gives me the same gift: a moment to slow down, a moment to breathe, a moment to reconnect with myself. And if there is one thing I have learned from this simple habit, it is this. Sometimes the body does not need extreme changes. Sometimes it only needs a little movement, a little fresh air, and a little quiet time to heal. So tonight, after dinner, you might consider something simple. Instead of sitting down immediately, step outside, walk slowly, feel the evening air, let your mind settle. Because sometimes the smallest step, taken every day, can gently change your health, your sleep, and your peace of mind. Thank you for spending this quiet time listening to this story. If you enjoy slow English stories like this that help you relax while learning, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you like, you can share in the comments. Do you enjoy walking in the evening? Your story might inspire someone else to take their first small step tonight.